Hello there, my name is Phil Williams and I would like to welcome you to Audio Angling, the podcast site of fishingfilmsandfacts.co.uk. In late 2009 I received a request from Dr. Sven Hille, a marine biologist at the Leibniz Institute for Baltic Sea Research, for the loan of some on-the-water video demonstrations concerning warrior boats. I was also asked if I could change the captions from English to German, which Sven kindly provided for me. The films were subsequently showed over in Germany at a boat show, which also features Sven's own Warrior 165, which he just kitted out specifically for Baltic Sea trolling, which is his speciality. Some time later, Sven invited me to fly over to Hamburg, pick up a train to his hometown of Rostock where he would meet me, then head over to the village of Schaprode on the Baltic island of Rügen to fish the April 2010 trolling competition, to which I immediately agreed. But unfortunately, as it would turn out, April 2010 was not a good time for air travel, as volcanic ash drifting south from Iceland completely closed much of Europe's airspace, leaving me stranded down in southern Spain. And when I did finally make it home by bus and train, our competition plans for a few days later were also left in tatters. That said, once the ash cloud threat was lifted, we hurriedly set about making new plans during May before the salmon trolling season came to a close. It was late afternoon when we finally arrived at Schaprode, with the wind howling at around 70 kilometres per hour. Even so, we still managed to grab a few windswept, reasonably sheltered hours tucked up inside the small island of Hiddensee, just outside of the harbour at Schaprode, fishing for, of all things, pike, which are both common and can grow huge in this part of the Baltic Sea. And with the wind dying away overnight, allowing us to head out into more open water the following day, we quickly added cod, salmon, sea trout and garfish to the list. For someone like me, who's more used to a physical separation between marine and freshwater species here in the UK, it can be a real job getting your head around the fact that pike, cod, sea trout and salmon are all a possibility on the same day, using the same tackle and in the same area of water. So to help set the scene, let me first welcome Sven and ask, can you give us an overview as to why this is possible and how speciation and fish mixing occur in the way it does in your corner of the Baltic Sea?
It's no problem. So the Baltic Sea is a very special sea. So it consists of a mixture of both freshwater and seawater. So the seawater originates from the North Sea and the freshwater is discharged mainly by rivers. And when they mix up, they build the so-called brackish water. And in the deeper parts of the Baltic Sea, let's say 30 meters and deeper, you have stratification. You have the lower saline water on top and the higher saline water at the bottom or closer to the bottom. And in between you have a so-called halocline. That means in a very short distance the salinity rises significantly. And this physical border also prevents ventilation or the transport of oxygen to the deep waters. And the only way to get oxygen into the deeper waters is inflow of new fresh seawater from the North Sea. And as salinity in the Baltic Sea differs also a lot, both with respect to, if you look into the depths, then you have decreasing or inflow from the entrance of the Baltic Sea towards east and further north, then the salinity decreases also in surface waters as you are getting away from the source for the salt water. And the Baltic Sea has salinities in the range of 1 per mil in the northernmost basins, and in the western Baltic we have salinities reaching values up to 25 per mil, and that is still lower than in the ocean. In the ocean we have 35 per mil. So the special situation with the brackish water means that also the fish inhabiting the Baltic Sea originates both from the sea and from freshwater. This is the reason why we can have also a mixture of both seawater and freshwater fish in the same area. And the particular spot where we have been fishing, close to the island of Rügen, has a salinity of about 10 per mil. And in those waters it actually happens that you have pike, cod, sea trout and salmon in the same area, at the same places.
So presumably, with fresh water floating on top of the more saline water, in shallow areas, and in particular the lagoon between Shaproda and Hidden Sea, the water will be almost entirely fresh, which should suit the pike more than the exclusively marine species such as cod, which will be slightly further off where the water is deeper and separates.
That's right, so there is a separation by depth. So we observed that the pike will not travel further into the Baltic Sea than 10 meters water depth. As in deeper waters you have higher salinities, they reach values higher than 10 per mil, and those waters are not suitable for pike. So the mixture of the seawater and freshwater fish we usually get in the more shallow near coastal waters. Yeah, that's true.
But presumably, at salinity crossover points there can also be species overlaps.
Yeah, that happens regularly to us, that we get this species mix on a single fishing day.
Now before we get into the actual fishing techniques used in the Baltic, which I have to say were totally alien not only to me, but will also be to most other UK boat anglers too, I would like to point out that anglers from your particular part of the world have had to learn these techniques very quickly, which clearly you've done well, because offshore sea angling was not possible along this stretch of the German Baltic coast prior to 1989.
Yeah, until 1989, so Germany was separated in an eastern and a western part. And I come from the eastern part, which belonged to the East Bloc countries. And in this country called GDR, German Democratic Republic, so traveling for people was very much restricted. So people were not allowed to travel to Western countries. The only countries we were allowed to travel was Poland, Czech Republic, Hungary. So that was very limited excess of countries where we were allowed to go. The administration was maybe afraid that people will leave the country to settle over to West Germany, for instance, or to go to Denmark or to Sweden. And for this reason, so they did not allow people doing what they would like to do in the areas close to the border. And also the sea coast in Germany was a border, and hence we were not allowed to do sea fishing, with some exceptions. So some fishing clubs owned boats, but not everybody could join, even being member in the fishing club. That was not enough. So you had to apply for a special permission to get the permission to go with the boat sea fishing, and you had to pass border control and leave your passport behind when going out fishing. And fishing was only allowed in some special areas, so they showed you where you are allowed to fish, so that nobody could escape. So small boat fishing was very unfamiliar to all of us, and we had to learn a lot. And what I did was I spent my holidays most time in Denmark. And in Denmark, people were very keen on sea fishing and very much skilled. And so I could easily pick up how to perform sea fishing just while exchanging with Danish anglers. And that took only a few years to get to know how to handle a boat and which tackle has to be used and things like this. Then step by step also people in northeastern Germany got their own boats and rigged them up for fishing. And I think we did very well, and maybe that is also related to the good conditions we have. We have lots of fish which we can target to fish, and so the success came not easily, but the success was achieved very fast, and that was a further motivation for us to keep going this way.
But small boating in particular seems to have caught on in your corner of the Baltic. Why then do you think that is?
I think small boat fishing provides lots of independence. So if you need to hire a charter boat or so, in this case you would be stick to departure times. You cannot decide on your own where to go, so then you depend on the charter captain. And if you have your own boat, then you can choose your fishing places yourself, and so you're more flexible with having your own boat. This is what drives more and more people into small boat fishing, just to have their own boats, to be independent.
You also have guided small boat fishing over here for visitors and newcomers, which is something we in the UK lack.
Yeah, guiding fishing has been established in the past, let's say, 10 years in our region, and this provides options for people new to sea or small boat fishing, just to get the first insight into this kind of fishing, while being on a guiding boat, so you can easily pick up the tackle they use and the places where they fish around the year, and that is a good point to start with when you decide to purchase your own boat, to collect some experience before with some other boats like guiding boat. What I recommend to everybody interested in getting his own boat.
So you'd recommend fishing from a guided boat, not only for UK visitors to Rügen, but also for German anglers so as to learn the boat angling, tackle requirements and fishing marks?
Yeah, I do 100% agree. Finally, you will also save money. It may sound strange as first you have to pay for it, and guiding boat takes you maybe 300 to 400 euro a day, but you will avoid making mistakes with getting the wrong tackle or investing into a wrong boat. And I think it's really worth to spend the money first for guiding boats, just to figure out if it's really what you would like to do. I think it's getting more and more popular. I think if you compare to Denmark, which has a much longer tradition in small boat fishing, then it's maybe only 20% of the fishermen population owning their own boat. So if you set Denmark as 100%, then we have still some potential in this way. I think it becomes more and more popular in Germany.
And what you also have is plenty of fish-rich sheltered waters, which also helps encourage small boat ownership.
That's right. So we have very nice fishing waters, and I would say the inner coastal waters around the island of Rügen are very famous for its pike fishing. And I think there is hardly any other place on our planet which provides the same quality pike fishing. And we have pike specialists from all over Europe, or let's say all over the world, coming to our region to fish for the big pikes. And also salmon fishing became more and more popular in spring and also in winter time, and we have also visitors from countries which have no access to the sea. So maybe I know some guys from Switzerland, they come every year for 1 or 2 weeks fishing salmon in the Baltic Sea, and they need to travel 1,200 kilometers to come to our place. And that shows that there's lots of interest from fishermen from abroad to fish in our waters.
And all of these fish can be caught just fishing with different types of lures and methods of presentation.
In the open Baltic Sea, so when we are targeting for salmon and sea trout, so the most efficient way is trawling, as this is the only way where you can cover lots of water, because you spread your lures both horizontally and vertically. And if you would do spin fishing or cast fishing, so then you would need maybe 10 or 20 much as time to cover the same waters. And so I think the only or the best way to fish for sea trout and salmon is trawling fishing. I think everybody having a boat could easily adapt the boat to make it suitable for trawling, and you don't need special equipment like downriggers. So the main or what you need most urgently are very stable rod holders, just to prevent rods falling into the sea when you have a massive strike of a big trout or salmon. But I would say basically, or it's very essential to have good rod holders, and then maybe some devices which bring your lure to some meter of water depth, but you could simply use some lead balls, and it's not much money you need to spend for those. So for the beginning, I think you can, for a few euro or pounds, you can have some fishing tackle which allows you to catch sea trout and salmon.
And if you don't want to get involved in the offshore trolling, there are still plenty of fish to be caught.
Yeah, that's for sure, for fishing pike and also for cod fishing. So the main method in our waters is cast fishing. And you need just some soft lures or some perks or some spoons, and then you can fish cod and pike, I think, in the same way as you do for pikes in your lake or for cod in your coastal water. So, and even fishing with worms or with with bait fish for cod, as you do in your waters, should also work in our waters. So that's for sure. And you could take the same tackle and don't need to invest into special rods or reels or whatever for fishing the Baltic Sea.
And for the strictly freshwater angler, it is possible to aim all your intentions at them with fish of 30 pounds and bigger being regularly caught.
It's possible for sure. So if you're only interested in fishing pikes, then I will recommend to stay inshore, just in the lagoons, as there are the other fish are only rarely in those waters. As mentioned in the beginning, so pike maybe in the Baltic in water depths up to 10 meters. And if you stick close to the shore and don't exceed water depths of 10 meters, so then it's more likely to run into a pike than into cod. So if you would like to catch for cod, so then I would recommend to go to some wrecks which are shown on your sea chart. Just have a look on the sea chart and look where the wrecks are positioned, and then just go to these spots and try just vertical fishing for cods. And if you like to catch the salmon or the big sea trouts, then I would suggest to go to the open Baltic Sea, to the deep water, maybe 30 to 40 meter water depths. So doing this, you could separate a little the fish which you may expect to get onto your hooks.
That's for the bigger sea trout, but I understand there are plenty of smaller specimens too closer into shore, all along the more exposed areas of coast.
That's right. So the sea trout tends to be present also in the more shallow water, but the salmon prefers deeper waters. But this is not a rule, so there might be some exceptions. So I remember a fisherman having caught a 15 kilo salmon just in 10 meters of water. But usually you get more sea trouts and more smaller sea trouts in the more shallow parts closer to the shore. So if you go to the open seas, then you can expect higher numbers and also bigger salmon.
I suppose a good example of a salmon being anywhere was Uli Schneider.
Ulrich Schneider, yes.
And he'd gone out initially with the intention of fishing for pike.
Yeah.
But came back in with the biggest salmon of the week. And what a good story that was.
In the morning we met with Ulrich, and he was not really sure where to go, and he had a mixture of rods and reels and was prepared for both pike and salmon fishing. And what he did, he just, based on the information we had from the previous day, or from the day before, we guided him to a place where he could expect good salmon fishing. And so he followed our suggestion, went out to the place, and he also used rods which are not suitable for salmon fishing, I would say. It was a telescopic rod, I remember, and a fixed spool reel. And it happened that the big salmon, exceeding 21 kilo, I remember, and this fish took the spoon on this telescopic rod paired with a fixed spool reel, and he had an incredible fight, and the tip of the rod broke, and it took 3 attempts to get the fish netted. But that shows, so if you have some luck, then you can also, with some cheap or not proper tackle, you can catch fish. But so I would never recommend going out with telescopic rods and fixed spool reels to go for salmon, as it may happen that you get only one chance a day, that you get only one strike, and then you should be prepared to have the right tackle to be finally successful. And that is just a recommendation.
So give us your personal recommendation for rods, reels and lines.
Well, let's start with the reels. So I would strongly recommend multiplier reels, so like from the Swedish company Abu, I think
Abu.
I would recommend the Abu 7000. That is big enough to host maybe 300 meters of 0.4 millimeter nylon line. And for beginners, I would highly recommend nylon line, as this line provides some stretch and makes it easier for you to play with the fish. So some experts recently changed also to braided lines, but I'm afraid that beginners could have problems with using braided lines. So I would suggest starting with nylon lines. And then there are special trawling rods. They are not really expensive, so you get good ones for maybe €50. But I would also recommend just to go with a set of rods which have the same length, as that minimizes the risk to get tangles in the line. If you have different sized rods, then it may happen more easily that the lines of different rods get tangled. And I think that is everything you need with respect to reels, rods and line.
Now for the skillful, complicated bit. The various items of trolling gadgetry to give you the biggest spread of lures both horizontally as well as vertically, and all without them tangling with each other.
Okay, let's start with the separation of lines. So on my boat, I can easily fish 10 to 12 rods in parallel without getting, let's say, too much tangle. So it may happen sometimes that you get tangle, particularly if you have multiple strikes. So if not only one salmon takes a spoon, but maybe 2 or 3 or 5 or even more. So then it regularly happens that you get some tangle, but during the normal fishing situation, tangles are very rare. And how to achieve this is quite simple, as you need to spread them both vertically and horizontally. For the vertical spreading, we use so-called downriggers, and the downriggers provides you the unique option to set the fishing lines on a predefined depth. So if you like to have your lures running 30, 40, 50, 60 feet, then you can lower your lead ball into that depth where you would like to fish your fishing line, and you can attach as many other lines as you like, but in reality it's only possible maybe to have 3 lines fished on a single downrigger. And you have so-called stacker clips which attach the line release clip to the metal wire which is on the spool of the downrigger, and at the end of this wire you have the weight which pulls all your stuff into the depths. And to have the spreading horizontally, we use so-called side planners. How to explain side planners? It's devices which have shape which allow the side planners to pull aside when you put them out to the boat, and the boat is steaming. Then the side planners track aside just due to its shape.
Yeah, it's rather like flying a kite, which instead of going up, goes sideways away from the boat as the boat moves forward, causing the force of water acting against a bend in the metal to act rather like a rudder, specifically angled to make it do just that. Actually, if my memory serves me right, you use 2 on each side of the boat at different distances, with clips for the line to take the lure well away from the boat.
It's like fishermen do with their trawling nets. They also spread aside. You can describe it like wings, and the wings go out either left or right hand side.
And they also stay on the surface.
This is right. So you have the buoyancy is provided by foam, and then you have a metal fin or metal keel, and on the side planner is the clip installed which keeps the fishing line until a fish strikes. So when the fish strikes, the line is going to be released, and you have another small hook which is used as a safety hook, so that the side planner always is attached to your fishing line. And when you fight the fish, then the side planner is always connected to your fishing line. And so that means that you get back of the side planner when you have your fish or your spoon back on board. The only difference with the clips on side planners on the downrigger is the size. The clips used on downriggers are much bigger compared to those used on the side planners.
And what sort of distances then can side planers take a lure away from the boat?
The side planers may travel maybe 30, 40, even 50 meters aside the boat. And that means, so if you have on the one side 50 meters aside and on the other side also 50 meters, then you have a coverage already of 100 meters. And then you have the option just to offer lures from the very surface. If you only attach some, or you can just offer spoons maybe of 20 grams and they just fish on the surface. But then also you can attach some weight in front of your lures on your side planners, and they may dive between 1 and 10 meters to also have the horizontal coverage. And on your downriggers you can go as deep as the bottom, and that means you can cover from the very surface to maybe 30-40 meter depths. That shows you that you have an incredible coverage of water. So you look both aside and in different depths at the same time, and you can offer at the same time different lures. So in the beginning of a fishing day, so when I'm not sure which is the preferred color or spoon type, so then I tend to fish different colored spoons and different shaped spoons just to figure out which is the top lure of the day.
That's the gadgetry to get the lures to where they need to be. But what about the lures themselves?
Basically, so there are very famous lures coming from the US, but there are also has been established some companies in Scandinavian countries which produce fantastic lures for trawling. And you can divide those first into the material used for producing them. So they can be divided in some made of plastic and others made of metal. The most famous plastic spoons are the so-called Apex. And Apex is from the US and available in sizes maybe from 3-inch to 7-inch. And those look like shoehorn. And the spoon, the Apex, looks very similar. Just a piece of plastic. And if you have a look first, then you can't imagine how it behaves in water. But it behaves that salmon and sea trout really like it. And with spoons you can separate between the spoons which have the shape like a spoon and those which are smaller at the edges, and both provide different running patterns, and you can't say the one is better than the other. You just need to figure out on 2 days. On the one day they may like the one better, and on the other day they prefer the opposite. So it's very hard to say that is a top lure. It just needs to be figured out day by day. But with respect to colors, it's always good to offer different colors in the beginning of a fishing day, just to figure out which color they like best. There are some rules saying that you have maybe if you have clear water, then you should stick to more natural colors. And if you have turbid water, then you may use some more bright colors, like the famous fire tiger design. But it happens regularly that also the opposite works better than what are claimed as rules. I think that changes from year to year, but this year it turned out that a color which was very similar to how a sand eel is colored, so that was olive green. And that turned out to be, at least on our boat, to be the most productive lure in this season. So at the end, so we only had this color on all of our rods, and we did really well and had a nice fishing this spring. But last year I remember we also had some nice fishing with fire tiger, but we had also good days just with the blue silver color, so which looked more like a herring maybe. And I think that changes quickly the preferences of the fish, but also the preferences of the fishermen. So it's very hard to say just this color is the best for forever. That is not possible, I would say.
And are there any alternatives here to simply fishing with spoons?
Some other fishermen prefer to fish with bait fish. For fishing with bait fish, they use bait heads where they attach the fish to, and when moving the bait fish through the water, it runs like a natural fish. And this is particularly important, or a suitable method, particularly at low water temperatures, when it's also recommended to fish the lures at a low speed. And this is a time where fishermen offering bait fish are better prepared for having good catches of fish. If you finally succeeded at getting a big fish on your trawling lures, then it's also very important to have the proper landing gear with you. So I warmly recommend you to have a big landing net available. This can be the biggest one you can get hold of.
And of course, another factor here is water depth, because while you can catch big sea trout mixed in amongst the salmon, in terms of numbers, they are actually better fish for elsewhere.
So trawling fishermen normally target for the big salmon when fishing off Rügen. Usually they are heading out towards the 30 meters counter and putting out the lures and start fishing. This water depths you can also expect to catch bigger sea trouts as they are mixed among the salmon. But if you focus on fishing for sea trouts, I would recommend to stay closer ashore in more shallow water, let's say water depths between 5 and 10 meters. Generally, the tactic for fishing salmon and sea trout is the same. Maybe some smaller lures are advised when especially fishing for sea trout.
Now obviously when trolling, the boat stays on the move from the moment you leave the harbour until you get back. So what specific thinking have you to put into your outfit choice with trolling in mind?
Kitting out the boat for trawling requires at first proper rod holders. I would suggest to choose one made of stainless steel. And professional fishermen which regularly fish for salmon in the Baltic Sea have also downriggers attached to their boats. And normally they are detachable and can be taken off the boat when other fishing is done on the boat. For all-day trawling, it's also a good idea to have an autopilot which keeps the course and gives the captain the time just to play the fish and don't take care for steering the boat. Having a boat for trawling, it's also very important to have the proper outboard engine fitted to the back of the boat. And the only way to go is to have the economical modern 4-stroke engines fitted. On my Warrior 165 I have a Suzuki DF80 which gives a perfect combination, and it runs all day with less than 1000 revs, which gives you a speed of around 1.5 to 2.5 knots. And while doing trawling at that speed, the engine takes about 1 liter fuel per hour. When heading towards the fishing marks or heading back to the harbor, I usually don't exceed 4000 revs. At that, the engine pushes the boat forward with a speed of 20 knots. And at this speed, the engine runs also very economical. So with 25 liters of fuel, I may travel 75 to 100 kilometers, depending on other factors which also affect the fuel usage, like wind and waves and water currents.
Although it would be quite a major undertaking trailing a boat across to Rügen from the UK, one big plus this corner of the Baltic has to offer over venues such as Ireland is that when you get there, as was demonstrated during my visit, regardless of what the weather throws up pretty much, you can at least get the boat on the water and realistically expect to catch something.
Well, weather needs to be also considered when planning fishing trips in our regions. There are good weather forecasts available, which gives you a good impression on how the weather will be developed over the coming 2 to 3 days. Up to a force 4 we go out to the Baltic Sea. If the wind is stronger, we tend to fish inside the lagoon as they provide a good shelter from the elements. If the wind is even stronger, there is an alternative fishing for sea trout along the long coastline from Rügen Island. Another problem which might occur, which is related to weather, is ice. Ice is normally not a big issue in the southern Baltic Sea, but in the last 2 winters we had very strong winters, cold temperatures from December to the beginning of March. And from end of December to beginning of March we had ice almost all of the lagoons, and that made it impossible for us to go out to the Baltic Sea fishing for salmon and sea trout. There are also some other fish species available which might be of interest for fishermen, but one should know that the number of fish species is comparatively low compared to other marine areas, and that is related to the brackish water conditions we have in the Baltic Sea. We can also fish for herring all year round, let's say. In summer we have mackerel and the garfish, and we have different species of flatfish in our waters. And those are fish which are common in the Baltic Sea. If you look into the lagoons, then we have a good fishing for pike, perch and sander, and that is also very attractive as the pike grow to very big sizes, and fishermen even from abroad come to our region to fish for the brackish pikes and also for the nice sander.
So weather and ice allowing then, what is the main time for fishing for salmon and sea trout?
Okay, for salmon and sea trout, so winter and spring, let's say from the season opens on December 15th and lasts until, let's say, beginning of May or mid-May. Cod you could fish all year round, so if weather conditions allow you going out to the Baltic Sea, then you should be able to catch cod in good numbers and sizes, maybe except to periods where they are on their spawning ground. So during that time, that's in winter, so end of February to end of March. So I would recommend or suggest to everybody just to go for other fish than for cod. For pike, it's also possible to catch all year round. So you have a very good period in the beginning of May, just when the season opens. And you have nice fishing in summer, in autumn, and also in winter time. So that is maybe also good to know that even in summertime, so there's very nice fishing for pike, as usually people assume that pike is a fish mainly for autumn or for winter fishing. That's not the case in our waters, particularly in summer, so they make much or give you much better fights when the water is significantly warmer than in autumn or in winter time.
Besides the fishing approach in terms of species mixing equipment, there is also one other area where Germany certainly differs from the UK, that being the requirement to buy a sea fishing licence.
In Germany the rules are that you need to pass a written exam to be allowed to be an angler. And if you manage to get hold of the exam, then you get a document which proves that you are an angler, and this is a fundament to be allowed to purchase fishing licenses. But for people from abroad, there are some special rules, so you can purchase a tourist license, which can be purchased for about 20 euros, and this document is valid for 4 weeks. And you can purchase it several times a year. And having this, you are allowed to purchase fishing licenses for water where you are interested to fish. The fishing license for the Baltic Sea takes only 20 euros a year. But if you would like to fish on some lakes, then the prices may differ, as they depend from the owner of the lakes, and they can make their own pricing.
If I was ever asked what the best way of fishing the area was for a foreign visitor, I would say to book one of the small guided boats to fish the trolling tournament, to ensure you get shown just exactly what's required and how all the equipment is handled.
Yeah, that's a good idea. So I also would recommend to go with a guided boat first, and maybe also to join the trolling competitions, as in this case, you have the chance to meet other people having the same interests and to share experiences. And I think with joining the trawling competition, so you will gain experience which you could collect your own maybe during 1 or 2 years if you make everything by your own. Also, the guiding companies offer that you can fish the competitions in company of the guides, and I think that would be really worth considering when going fishing the Baltic salmon for the very first time. I think the price is about 70 or 80 euro, and that includes some meals and some starter kits. You get some lures and some other items as a starter kit. And at the end, there's usually a closing event which takes place in a nice hotel with a nice dinner and with handing over of the prizes. And the prizes are very different from year to year. This year, my friend won the competition, and he caught a salmon weighing close to 22 kilos, and he won a Yamaha outboard, 5 horsepower. That shows that you get no money, but you get some tackle or some items which you need for doing fishing in the Baltic Sea. But the prices also depends on the sponsors which contribute to the competitions, and so there is the changes from year to year.
And when does that take place?
The competition usually takes place end of April. I think we can provide some links giving the web pages from the guiding companies, and on the website there are all information on the dates and on the rules and the application documents. Everything is available on the websites.
And what is the prize structure?
They have prizes both for the biggest sea trout and for the biggest salmon. But they have also another, I think the third prize is devoted to the team which caught most fish. And I think that is even more challenging to catch several nice fish. Just to catch a big fish, that depends mainly on luck. But the team competition, I think that is the most challenging one, at least for me.
Out of curiosity now, what was the biggest salmon ever brought to the competition scales?
I think the biggest ever caught during the competition was the one from my friend this year, and this fish was 22 kilos. And in the other years, so the biggest fish was always in the range of 12 to 17 kilos.
Having fished the area with Sven, though not as part of a trolling competition, which wasn't possible as I said earlier due to the closure of European airspace at the time, I can vouch for the quality of both the fishing and the venue. I would, however, like to reiterate the point that while it would be possible to trail your own boat there, in the same way as doing so to some of the bigger Irish competitions, it would also be advisable to go out on a guided boat first to get some handle on the where, when and how. All that remains now is to thank Sven for his contribution, and to commend him for his excellent self-taught English, which, while thinking on your feet for an interview such as this, even when English is your native language, is never easy.